friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Lauren, you may also call me Lo, and today's video is another ARC reading vlog of Heart of the Sun Warrior by Sue Lynn Tan, which is the sequel to Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Sue Lynn Tan. This is a duology, so Heart of the Sun Warrior is the second and final book in the series, which is great. I love me a good duology, and I'm really excited to share my reading experience of Heart of the Sun Warrior with you. I'm not going to spoil Heart of the Sun Warrior in this vlog, but I am going to spoil Daughter of the Moon Goddess in this vlog because I don't feel like I can really talk about the sequel without spoiling the first book. So if you have not read Daughter of the Moon Goddess yet, I do not think this is the video for you. However, I did do a spoiler-free review of Daughter of the Moon Goddess in my purple reading vlog, so I will link that down below. Today is Friday, and I started Heart of the Sun Warrior last night, but I only got through about 2 chapters, or like 5% of the book. But we are picking up kind of where we left off in Daughter of the Moon Goddess. So Xingyin is living back on the moon with her mother, and they are no longer exiled there. So they live there kind of their own free will, but now people can come in and visit them. So they're receiving a lot of visitors, and Xingyin is sort of suspicious of one of them. So that is what's happening right now. Again, I've only read 2 chapters, but I feel like this sequel has been a lot easier to get into than Daughter of the Moon Goddess was. I remember when I was reading Daughter of the Moon Goddess, I had a kind of hard time just getting into it and like caring about the story for a little bit. Like I want to say for like 10%, 15% maybe of the book. So I definitely feel like Heart of the Sun Warrior, like from the get-go, I was interested. I wanted to know what was going on. And I feel like Sue Lynn Tan does a really good job of kind of sort of summarizing little bits and pieces of what happened in the first book in kind of the opening of the second book, which is really helpful because I think I read Daughter of the Moon Goddess maybe in like April? I don't know. It was much earlier this year. So it's been nice to kind of have that recap since I was a little bit nervous about not really remembering what happened in the first book, but it's coming back to me really quickly, which is great. I am going to spend today like cleaning my house mostly, but I am hoping to get through, I don't know, like a good chunk of the book, maybe like 15, 30% before my next update. And I'm hoping that that'll be today. We'll see. I'm also listening to Sundial by Katrina Ward, and that audiobook is going to expire really soon, so I want to get through that today. But we'll see. Maybe I'll just have a really productive reading day. Regardless, I will see you in a little bit. It's the same day, and I've made it to 19% of the book, which doesn't feel like a lot, but I think the book is supposed to be about 500 pages long, which means I've read about 100 pages. And it's pretty good so far. Like, a big revelation's been made that I don't want to spoil, but some information that Xingyin got in the first book ended up not being true. And now there's like sort of a heist being planned, which is really interesting. And I'm really enjoying that aspect of the story so far. There is kind of the same love triangle happening between Xingyin and Li Wei and Xingyin and Wenzi, which is kind of annoying. Like, you'd think that this would be resolved at this point, but even though Wenzi betrayed her, he's trying to like regain her favor, and Li Wei is trying to like marry her. And I don't feel like that's a spoiler because all of this is like sort of presented right at the beginning of the book, but you'd think that this would be over by now. And in the first book, like the more appealing love interest was Wenzi, in my opinion. Liwei to me was like the reliable love interest, whereas Wenzi was like the bad boy love interest. And in comparison to Wenzi, for me, Liwei was like really kind of the boring option. And then obviously Wenzi like betrays Xingyan at the end of the book, so Liwei is obviously like the better match. But now Wenzi's trying to regain her favor, and he's still, in my opinion, like the better love interest, or the more interesting love interest. So the same kind of thing is happening in terms of like the romantic relationships in this book, in my opinion. So that's kind of a bummer. I mean, it's not a bummer, but it's like the same thing. But there's been like a lot of new revelations about Xingyan's past, and I guess not Xingyan's past, but her parents' story. And that part I've really, really enjoyed. I think the whole like kind of mythology aspect of these books is really coming into play in this book. And I really, really love that aspect. So far so good. I'm really enjoying myself. I think that I'll update next probably tomorrow, just because I'm going to continue chugging through this book. And I guess tonight, if there's like any major thing that I want to talk about that comes up, I will, but I'll probably see you tomorrow. It is several days later. I've been slowly reading Heart of the Sun Warrior, but I've made such little progress the last couple of days that it didn't really feel like it made sense to update more. So now I'm about 51% through the book, and I do have some thoughts. Overall, if you really loved Daughter of the Moon Goddess, I highly recommend reading this book. Like, it is a good time for sure. I have a couple of small complaints about it. The main thing is that, at least until the 50% mark, Xingyan has gone on a couple of like what I would call self-contained missions, where she has an objective, she goes on the mission, usually something goes wrong during the mission, and she's either rescued or whatever issue it is fairly easily resolved. I guess like quickly resolved is maybe more of it. And then we move on to the next kind of self-contained mission. So at the 50% mark, I'm like not quite sure where the story is going. Like I can't tell you what's going to happen in the second half of the book. There's like a clear identified enemy, so I'm assuming we're kind of leading up to some kind of confrontation with that enemy, but it feels a little bit like it's been meandering quite a bit in the first half. With that said, the writing is breathtaking. Like, Sue Lynn Tan is excellent at writing. If you loved the writing in Daughter of the Moon Goddess, it's absolutely the same in this book, and that aspect is amazing. It's atmospheric, it's beautiful. I love that part of it. I have to say, and I know I've already mentioned this, but the love triangle is getting very old for me. I actually didn't mind the love triangle in the first book. I actually really enjoyed the love triangle in the first book. And I think I mentioned in my Purple Book vlog where I talked about Daughter of the Moon Goddess that it was like my favorite love triangle, and I stand by that. Like, it's a very good love triangle. But it does feel like at this point in Xingyan's story, this particular love triangle should be sorted out. And it's just like getting old. That's all I can really say about it. It actually doesn't like, I don't hate it. Like, I like Xingyan and her suitors' stories, but it does feel like, why are we still doing this? If that makes sense. I'm very eager to read the rest of this book. I definitely am having a good time. If I were to rate it now, it's probably like a 3.5 to 4 star. I'm not getting 5-star vibes, but it's better than a 3-star. That's what I can tell you right now. We'll see how I feel at the end. Obviously, things can change. I have a whole half of this book to read still. I am feeling like it's not as fast-paced as Daughter of the Moon Goddess was, and I feel like I'm reading it in smaller chunks than I did Daughter of the Moon Goddess. So I will say it's definitely slower. but I am enjoying it. And I do want to keep reading. So I will update you when I get to the like 70 to 80% mark. It is the next day. I'm now 77% through the book, which is pretty good. I am definitely enjoying it more like after the 50% mark. There have been a couple of significant developments, interestingly, surrounding the love triangle, but also surrounding the plot. They're kind of colliding in a very interesting way. Xingyan is absolutely going through it, but I'm now like much more interested in what's going on, both in the actual like main plot of the story and in the like romance department. And I feel like throughout this book, I felt like the stakes were really low. Like it didn't feel like anything bad was gonna happen. And now things are happening that are making me feel a little bit more like, ooh, what's gonna happen? This is stressful, but like in a good way. You know what I mean? I'm enjoying myself a lot. I'm hoping to get through the book tonight or tomorrow. And I don't think I'm going to do another update before like my final update. So that's kind of all I have to say right now. I know that's like a cop-out of a update, but I don't want to spoil it. I think I'm leaning more toward 4 stars. So that's great. I will see you in a little bit once I finally finish this very long book. Alright friends, I'm about 92% through the book now, and I said I was going to update when I was done, but I'm going skiing today. It's the next day from the last update that I did, and my friend is going to come pick me up. I'm not very motivated, so she might bail, and if she bails, I'm definitely going to bail, but I feel like I want to update one more time before the end because I have a little bit more to say than I did last time. I think I said a couple of clips ago that I felt like Xingyan was going on these like missions and then they were just like resolved kind of disappointingly easily, which sounds weird, but hopefully you know what I mean. I felt like after the 50% mark there was a little bit more intensity to the things that Xingyan was doing and going through, and I was liking that, but then I was continuously still disappointed by the kind of resolution of every issue that came up. It just felt way too easy, I guess. Toward the end, closer to where I am now, like, I don't know, 85 to 92%, there was definitely a little bit more intense scenes and higher stakes scenes, which was good. And there was a moment that did make me, like, I can't say cry, but it made me feel things. Like, it made me tear up, and I wasn't really expecting that, given how I've felt so far in this book. So I'm still at, like, the 3.5 to 4 kind of feeling for this book. I haven't finished it yet, but I think that to, like, pinpoint my disappointment with this book, it's really that it feels like things are just too easy for Xingyan, and it doesn't really feel very high stakes in general. And I feel like I was getting excited about those like more intense things that were going on, and then they just kind of like disappointingly resolved. So I don't know, I feel like I usually can't like like I usually don't really quite understand like an author's like outline for a book, but I feel like in this one I can really see the like structure of the book, in that like we're doing this is resolved, then we're doing this is resolved, then we're doing this is resolved. This next thing kind of relates to the other things, but then it's resolved easily, and then we move on to this thing and then it's resolved, and it's just kind of like, it's not It's not a keeping you on the edge of your seat book in the way that I think Daughter of the Moon Goddess was to a greater extent. So, I don't know. I mean, if I finish the book and I'm like, okay, it was pretty good, but it wasn't as good as Daughter of the Moon Goddess, I'll probably give it a 3.5 star. If the ending is really satisfying, I'll give it a 4. I feel like maybe I should give it a 4 since I did have that moment of like emotion, which is rare for me in a book. That usually bumps up my rating a little bit, but we'll see. Next clip, I'll for sure be done. I'm going to finish tonight. I don't know if I'll update tonight. I'm going to stop holding myself to updating the same day because it usually doesn't happen. But if I go skiing, it might not happen. If I don't go skiing, I'll probably update in the next couple of hours because I don't have a lot left. All right. I did end up going skiing yesterday and I got home and I finished the book, but I wanted to kind of sit and like digest my thoughts because I have had a slight change of heart with this book. Not a major change of heart, just a slight change of heart. So I guess I'll start with the ending since that's where we're at. The ending of this book was beautiful. It was just such a pleasant surprise. I thought it was like so wholesome, so beautiful. I thought the like final theme of the book was really beautiful. And despite my like slight frustrations throughout kind of the first half, I want to say, of this book, even a little bit past the halfway mark, I was enjoying myself. Don't get me wrong. I feel like I did complain a lot in this video, but I was enjoying myself. I just felt like things felt a little bit too easy for Xingyin. Like I said before, it felt like we had a lot of little kind of side plots where I was like, I don't feel like we're really at the crux of the thing, and I don't really know why we're doing this. But at the end, it kind of all did come together and make sense, and I thought it did come together very, very beautifully. I think that this book really has the writing going for it. Same as in the first book, the writing is absolutely gorgeous, breathtaking, lyrical writing. I do think that this world of like celestial gods, sort of like immortal people, is very interesting, and I think Sue Lynn Tan did a beautiful job creating this world. And ultimately, like I said, the ending was beautiful. It was so, so good. It definitely feels like the end of a duology, although I found out yesterday, looking at Goodreads, that there's supposed to be a third book coming out, which is so classic. Every duology I've read has become a trilogy or a longer series, so I'm not shocked. Although I will say that this really does feel like the end of something, and I'm pretty curious to see what the next book would be about. I take that back. I do know what the next book would be about because it kind of ends at a beginning, if that makes sense, but it ends at a beginning in a way that I can like live with not knowing what happens next. I don't know if that makes any sense, but yeah, I'm just really happy with the way that it ended. I feel like it just was really good. I finished the book and I was immediately like, this was as good as the first book. Like, for sure this was as good as the first book. It took a little while to get there, and I tell you, if you are reading this book and you're frustrated, or if you're not sure if you want to read it because you don't like what I described before with the kind of way that the plot is structured in this book, it is a much slower book. It is less action-packed, I guess, as the first book. It's definitely less action-packed. It is slower. But ultimately, it's so worth it. I highly recommend it. If you're watching this, you probably did read Daughter of the Moon Goddess, but I definitely would not sleep on the sequel. It was really good. I ended up giving it 4 stars, and yeah, I recommend it. It was great. So that brings us to the end of this vlog. If you're new to my channel, please consider liking this video and subscribing. I put 1 bookish video out every week, sometimes 2, if I can pull it off. If you're still here, thank you so much for being here. I always really appreciate it, and I will see you next time.